Hello people of the internet, welcome to the Painting with Commentary, How to Make This Water Genie. Tonight we're going to be painting a Marid from Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. Here's a picture of a Marid from the Monsters Manual, how they look. I'm going to follow similar paint schemes to that, and these are the paints that I'm going to be using. They're all Citadels for the most part, and they will be on the screen during the video. If you missed the episode 65 about the Marid and want to hear the unique story about how I wrote a backstory and how you might use Marid in your campaign, check out episode 65 of Paint to Life in the link below. But now, on with the Marid. This is Nolzur's Marvelous Miniature. It's a relatively small mini, so this video is not very long. It's not very much to paint. But I knew right out of the box that I wanted to do something special. Genies can live inside inanimate objects, and in this case, a seashell made sense. Luckily, I have a 10-year-old son who keeps things like this around in his room, so I was able to raid some, pick one that looked good, break the Marid off the base, and put it in there to test, and I have myself something that I like. So getting started on this, I'm going to use ORRUK Flesh from Citadel. This green is a relatively new paint. They released it in the summer of 2021. I picked it up. It's similar to some of the other greens in the line, but leans a little bit more towards the yellow, which is always fun to use. The yellowy paints, or mustard colors as I call them, with contrast paints over top of them. So to work with this green as a foundation was my first choice. Just a little bit of, remember to thin your paint, put it on it's a base, so we're putting it down and adding a little bit of water to it to keep it runny. You can build up multiple layers of the same color if you want more intense color. But you just want it to be nice and smooth to apply on the mini. This is the first mini in a while. Also, I hadn't used an airbrush. So next, we're going to use the CERAMITE white. Now, CERAMITE white I always go to and talk that I'm using when I make these videos. It's not actually CERAMITE white. That's just a Citadel's white, and mine is so damn chunky. I don't know what it is about there. I've used it a few times, but mostly any old white will do. Sometimes I use white Scar, which is a layer paint that Citadel has. It's pretty much white, slightly off, but it's your default white, and I'm going to touch it up later to give it a little bit more definition. But off the start, on this guy's nice shirt, it's just going to be straight up white. The chest as well, white. As I was painting the chest, I noticed on his belt, not only did he have a pouch, but he had a fish, which is also represented in the player's handbook, in the Monsters Manual for 5th edition. So this model is definitely designed right after that. Now for his blue overcoat, I'm using a KANTOR blue. Now if you're new and you want a little bit of advice, you don't want to hit that clear column that he's on with paint. So you can tape it up if you have some masking tape or painter's tape. Wrap it around that clear area. So you don't accidentally clip it. Now I've been doing Paint to Life for a year and a bit, almost 2 years actually, and so I've got enough control not to make mistakes. But if you were to accidentally clip that plastic clear piece, you can quickly rub it out by getting your brush loaded with water and just kind of painting over the mistake with water. But you only have about 30 seconds to do this, because the acrylic paint dries so quickly that it will start to crust and leave a permanent shell that you'll have to remove with a scraper of some kind. So just a tip if you're not too comfortable painting around the clear with your freehand. Now we're moving on to another mustard color for his pack, HOBGROT hide. This is another one of the new Citadel paints they released in the summer. There was a third one as well. It's a deeper brown. I don't believe I used it on this model though. But HOBGROT hide, it also is a good undertone for a contrast paint. KREIG KHAKI is my next color here. It's a light green, almost yellow, and again I'm going to be using it as an underlayer for a contrast paint beneath it. So now Wordbearer's Red is a Citadel paint. It's almost like a burgundy. It looks good for the coat sash around this particular genie's sash and, well, the lining of his jacket. So that's why I decided to use that. As always, if you guys like my content, please like and share and subscribe to help the channel grow. It is definitely a lot of fun making the videos, and I like to have as many people watching them as possible. Additionally, I always respond to all the comments, so if you have any questions about anything, even years later, I'll get a comment out of the blue, and I'm still responding to them, because when you're nice and small like this, doing it as a passion project, it's very easy to reach out to people who have questions, even years after the fact. So even if you're listening to this in 2024, if you have a question, as long as I'm not dead, I'll throw a response. Now for this trident, this is a CANOPTEK alloy paint from Citadel. It's almost like a rose. I don't know, how would you describe it? You know, I realize that a lot of these Citadel paints are designed to work on Warhammer miniatures, and I don't paint Warhammer, so for me, this is just great for a sort of bronze, but a light bronze trident for an underwater creature. To you Warhammer fans out there, CANOPTEK alloy is for the CANOPTEK wraiths in Warhammer. And I apologize if I'm butchering the pronunciation of CANOPTEK. But for me, it's just a different metallic in my box of metallic colors, and I thought it complemented the green better than iron. Not to mention, you know, underwater, those iron and steels would start to rust. So now I'm putting some HOETH blue onto the KANTOR blue for like a layering effect. I'm still kind of new to miniature painting, and if you've been following the channel, you'll know a lot of the times I just do things that I think will look good, and sometimes they do and sometimes they don't. Remember, anytime you're painting something, whether it's your first time or your 50th time, you are making something that is truly one of a kind. Nobody else in the world has what you have in your hand, and even your worst mistakes on the worst days will look better than the unhappy gray plastic or primer that they come out as. So take your opportunity to paint something to life. So there's this gem in the trident, which in the monsters manual is purple. So I'm going to be using a STORMHOST silver to start, and also with his gem buckle, putting a layer of STORMHOST silver in there, and then I'll hit it with some purple metallic paint later. And this is that fun little fish that he has on his belt. So I'm using also the STORMHOST silver to paint the fish. And again, because these things are flexible and malleable, trident's in your way, just bend it. It'll snap back over time. Now these cool little pauldrons he has in his shirt, back to the KREIG KHAKI, which is, again, was the same color we did his belt. This is just a temporary color. They do look like this in the player's handbook, like a kind of yellowy green. I don't know what those are full of. I like to imagine they're full of like potions and things, but they're probably just poofy shirt shoulders. So for now, we paint them up, trying our best not to hit the blue or the white, and remembering, if we do, with our wet palette, which is off screen, I still have those other colors, the blue and the white, so I can touch up the mistake as soon as it dries, and the problem solved. So this is a CAMOSHADE, ALTHONIA CAMOSHADE shade, but it's so dark. As I was looking to apply it to this guy's skin, I realized if I was to put that onto his skin, it would be way too dark. So using some LAHMAIN medium, you could also use water. I have the medium, which is a component of the shade. I'm going to dilute it and now apply it to that green face. So instead of it being the camel green straight, which would cause that to mostly turn green, by cutting it, I'm able to apply it where it stays almost translucent, except it is settling in the nooks and crannies, and it's going to darken up between the fingers, between the gills, and in the hair. Now that that's dried, I'm using a SKARSNIK green to just do some layering on the higher portions of the model. Eyebrows, cheekbones, the fins, the tops of the backs and the fingers. Pick a green that complements the green that you're working with, but it's slightly lighter, and it is layering. You're putting on another color that's lighter, and it causes the finished product to stand out, have a little more pop. But because I've done that camo shade, the overall green of the skin has gotten darker. So this will just help accentuate the parts that are raised up. Apply it to the back fin, and moving on to a Castellan green. This is a nice dark green to also accent things like his fish lips. It's amazing. In my episode, I make a reference to how this thing looks like the Gungan from Star Wars, Boss Nass. And while painting this, you can't help but hear it in your head. So using this Castellan green to also, similar to Lair, but I'm putting it in the more recessed areas to give those fins a little bit of color. Also his lips and his eye sockets and the spines of the fin down his back are going to get hit with this. And I'm just playing around here. There's no rhyme or reason. I have the Monsters Manual for inspiration of the color scheme, but I'm just trying things. Some things work, some things don't. Pick one, try it, know for next time. If it was terrible, don't do it again. If you're happy, you're probably good. So I've gone back to some of the original green to touch up some of my overflow on the green. Now I'm using a Caliban green as well to put some lines. If you have a lot of paints, it's very nice to use different paints to... The difference between a rookie paint job and something that's starting to get a bit better is using colors properly with your midtones, your accents. I'm not very good with color theory, and I'm not here to explain that today, but I will say this. Blending all those colors together makes it look a lot better than if it was just 3 colors or 2. So if you don't have all these different colors, feel free to take the one you do have and add some black to it and add some white to it to get a higher shade and a lighter shade. So now on top of the white, I am using Gray Seer. Gray Seer is a color from Citadel that very much matches the default primer that these Nolzur's Marvelous Miniatures are painted. So I'm basically painting over the white with this Gray Seer just to add some creases, some fold lines, you know, like lines under his boobies, just to give him some definition. The fold parts of the cloth. Anywhere I'm putting Gray Seer is going to look wet or creased or folded, and that's kind of what I'm looking to achieve with that, as well as the white paint. And I think that turned out pretty good. Originally I think I was going to use a white contrast paint, which would have had a similar effect. Using the white contrast paint slips my mind. Apothecary white, there it is. If you have that and use it, you'll kind of get a similar effect. So now I'm using Darkoath Flesh. This is a shade from Citadel on top of that satchel, just to give it some more definition. And because the color is light, the Darkoath sits and to the creases and the sunken sections, and you get a nice little two-tone effect. ZANDRI dust is going on top of his belt. So I originally used KREIG KHAKI, if I recall earlier, but now that I look at it, it's a little too light green and I wanted it to be a little more yellow, so I'm painting over it with that ZANDRI dust. For the eyes, just a little bit of Gray Seer, a very fine brush, just the tip. Phrasing. You want those eyes to look, in the Monsters Manual, they look like gray orbs. So, gentle application of Gray Seer into those orbs. There are little orbs in those eye sockets. They're just little teeny dots. If you gently apply the paint, you'll catch them, and then they'll look like round dots. So now we're using a BEIL-TAN green shader. This is full strength. It's not been diluted. Of course, I've zoomed in to get a better view of the paint. It's off screen. It really does change those KREIG KHAKI to a much darker green. Still with the same family though, so it doesn't look too weird. And of course the shade runs down the spaces between the balls, which of those sleeves, which gives it a nice two-tone effect where it's lighter on the top and darker down the edge. So now I'm using Retributor armor. It's a nice golden metallic gold, but it's a little more orangey. And this is just as the buckle around the gem on his belt. He also has, it looks like a chain around his neck which I hit with the Retributor armor as well. And then it's probably off to get that metallic purple. It's called Royal Purple. It's from the Army Painter's metallic line. I use it similar to the gemstone paints from Citadel, the technical ones. I put a little bit on and I kind of pull it across to let the Stormhost silver underneath come through. See? You don't want to put it too heavy because you want it to be transparent. So the Stormhost silver underneath will have a nice reflective property. And then the amethyst, like that purple color, will shine nicely. So this WAZDAKKA red, this is the second color for the red that I did around this vest. You can see it dried very burgundy. That original Word Bearer's red. So by adding the WAZDAKKA red there, you're gonna get a good two-tone effect like that. There's a seashell on his chest. I think I used HOETH blue, the same thing I used to accent his cape. And then the other one's Retributor armor. Yeah, here's the HOETH blue, also for the buttons that go up that red sash. So just take your time, find the little dots, give a little paint love, and they'll stick on there and they'll step up. Just like that. Now on top of these, we're back to KREIG KHAKI, which you guys will remember is what these started as. So these orbs, they started as KREIG KHAKI. Then we put the BEIL-TAN green shade over top of them. See right there, if you look on the right, well, the left now, it's looking khaki, and the other side of him is looking BEIL-TAN. I didn't really like the color. I wanted to go back to the KREIG KHAKI. So I'm painting over the BEIL-TAN stain, but I'm not pushing down all the way. I want to keep those dark cracks between each ball, and that's what I'm kind of doing. I'm basically just painting the tops of each one of those little segments back to my KREIG KHAKI, and once they've all been grabbed, they all have a little bit of dimension now because deep below. So here he is sitting into the shell, and I knew I was going to use some UV resin, so I pour a little bit of UV resin into the shell and use a UV light to harden it up. That'll be the base he sits on. So here's my guy. This is a bit earlier in the paint job, but you'll see the concept. I've set him in there just like I showed you at the beginning of the video, so I know I have enough gel in there to hold him up. So the next step is to do some tests. I'm using clear resin, and you can see in this picture I've tried to dye it. It didn't work very well, and in that center of my wet palette there's that yellow slime. That's called splash gel from Green Stuff World, and that's what I'm using right now. You can see the little foot pad at the bottom of the conch. That's UV resin. I filled the conch with UV resin. I glued him to the UV resin foothold that I started, and then I poured more UV resin in so it gooped out and down, and then I left a little puddle for it to sit on and acts kind of like a stabilizing foot pad. But coloring the resin didn't work very well with my Citadel inks, and painting the resin with ink after it dried was not very good. It gets cloudy and doesn't look very good, but right now that clear water pad looks great, and using this water gel from Army Painter, no, this is Green Stuff World, I'm sorry, using this water gel and just spackle the shit out of it. See how it's building up? Pushing down, I want it to look like splashes, so I'm building it up and I'm pushing it down and I'm pushing it over, because this is like water pouring out of this conch. Every time this Marid is summoned, water pours out. So put lots of this on there, and when it dries, it's transparent and looks like splashes. So that's the product. Now to dye it, I use Drakenhof Nightshade, but I also thinned it with some of my LAHMAIN medium, despite not putting it on that slide there. Going on, you can see it does somewhat tint the clear mediums, but not so much that it looks like he's been poured in navy paint. It's a very subtle tint, and it doesn't dry, it pools, so again, you have to play with it a bit like I did here, but put it all over his whirly plastic pit and the bottom, and once it dries, it looks like this. Now I'm using Imric Blue dry brush paint, as well as Praxetti White. So now that I have this splash effect dried up, Now I'm just using some of the other colors to dry brush them to give them more of an iconic watery feel, including his swirl like that. And that is all for the Marid named No One. Again, please like and subscribe and share the channel if you'd like. Go watch the story video because that's where my heart in the channel is mostly. Here's a finished picture of the water elemental known as No One from different angles. Also, let me know in the comments below if some people seem to struggle with taking pictures of miniatures. I have my own little process. It's not unique by any means, but if you would like me to go over a video on how I take pictures of miniatures using my DSLR camera, I would be willing to make a tutorial on that as a Paint to Life episode. But for now, that's it. That's the Marid. Thank you for watching. I really appreciate your patronage. You guys have a great day and wash your hands, folks.